So we talked about getting your license and getting riding gear. The very next thing is buying that first motorcycle. Now, there's a lot of things to consider with your first bike. So sit back, listen, and hopefully by the end of this, you will have a good idea of what bike you should buy as your first motorcycle. Hey everyone, Matt here, and welcome back to TS Moto Adventures. The very first thing I want you to consider is your style of riding. I've said this before, and it's because it's very important. Buying a bike you think you're going to like, and then at the end of the day, a year later, a month later, 2 days later, realizing that it was a mistake is not a fun situation to be in. So really think about what kind of style of riding you're planning on doing. Now, once you've decided on that style of riding, you're gonna need to start looking at bikes. I highly recommend you get a used one as your first bike. You're gonna drop it, you're gonna ding it up, you're gonna mess around with it and do stupid things. It's not worth doing that to a new bike just because every single little thing, it's gonna eat at you. You're gonna be upset with yourself. Don't go through that. Get a used bike. The other advantage of getting a used bike is they can be significantly cheaper than buying a bike new. Also a lot easier to find right now. It's really hard to find a lot of new popular bikes because there's wait lists like a mile long. So definitely consider the used market. Now, if you do want to buy a new motorcycle, there's nothing wrong with that. My very first bike was brand new. I thankfully haven't dropped it or dinged it up or anything like that, but having a new bike as your first bike can be very anxiety inducing. So just think about that, but it's definitely something you can do if you want to. The next biggest thing I want you to think about as a new rider is getting a bike that's actually going to fit your skill level. Getting a leader bike as your first bike is a terrible idea. You're going to kill yourself. It's not worth it. Get a bike with a lower CC. This is another reason why I recommend buying a used bike, because when you outgrow it, and you inevitably will, you don't have nearly as much of an investment sunk into it. Depending on your size, your style of riding, etc., you're going to want to pick out a bike probably in the 200 or 300 cc range. So if you're a smaller rider, going with that lower displacement is going to be a much better option for you. You're going to be able to hit higher speeds if you want to do that, but you're not going to kill yourself with horsepower right off the line. In my case, I ended up with a 500cc as my first bike. I'm a bigger guy. It worked out for me really well. A 500cc bike may be a little too much if you're a smaller person, but at the end of the day, I love the bike. I think it's perfect for me, and I haven't really outgrown it as much as I've changed my style of riding. If you're considering getting into off-road stuff, please keep this in mind. Having a lower displacement bike doesn't mean you have less capability off-road. As a matter of fact, the majority of stuff I guarantee you're going to be doing your first year or two riding is not going to be anything where you're going to think that you're going to need a shit ton of horsepower or a really high displacement. Trust me, I have a DRZ 400S. I've never come close to maxing out that bike's potential off-road. That bike can do so much more than I'm capable of. So if you're looking at getting into off-road riding, getting a 250 or a 300 is totally fine. It's gonna be more than enough bike for off-road, and it'll be fine for you on the highway. Just don't spend too much time on the highway. One of the factors that a lot of people don't think about when they buy a motorcycle is the cost of insurance. It can be kind of expensive to insure a brand new rider. When I was looking at my first bikes, I was also getting insurance quotes to see how much it was going to cost me. I was looking at financing a bike for my first one and not buying something outright. There was this used Kawasaki ER6N, 600cc. It was in blue. It kind of beat up, but I felt like, oh, that'd be a really cool first bike. It's a little beat up. I don't have to worry if I drop it or anything like that. It's got enough power that I can, get on the highway and not have to worry. I went and got an insurance quote on that thing, and if I was financing the bike, it was gonna cost me an insane amount of money to insure, more than my car. Like, it was ridiculous how expensive it was. And that's because I was a brand new rider and it was a higher displacement bike. It was more dangerous. When I ended up quoting out my insurance for my Honda CB500F, 100cc difference, the CB500F is way more of a beginner bike, and the insurance price was so much less. So just really think about that. Get some insurance quotes, see how much it's gonna cost you before you go dump a bunch of money into a bike to realize you're gonna be paying crazy insurance premiums every month on it too. Now, the final thing I want you to do after you've kind of gotten all this settled, you've decided on a few different options, you've figured out how much it'll cost you to insure, talk to a dealership or talk to the private seller that you're buying from and test ride that thing. Get it out there on the road. Ideally, see if you can do some kind of extended test ride. There's nothing worse than buying a motorcycle and realizing you hate it. You hate the way it feels, you hate the way it rides, you hate everything about it. Getting some seat time on the bike you're interested in makes a huge difference and helps you really decide whether or not it's worth it to buy that bike. I've been very fortunate in both bikes that I bought. I didn't test ride beforehand, but I loved them instantly. This is not always the case. During one of the rallies that I went to recently, I had the opportunity to demo ride some bikes. So I was able to demo ride a Harley Pan America, a Yamaha Tenere 700, and a Triumph Tiger 900 GT. The really nice thing about this was I was able to get out there on these bikes and figure out if I liked it or not. And guess what? Some of the bikes I liked, some of the bikes I didn't like. One of the things that I will say that Harley did that was the best thing I've seen, and I think every dealership should offer this in some way, is they did an hour-long demo ride in mixed terrain. They took us out on ATV trails, they took us out on twisty pavement. You got a real feel for the bike to be able to decide whether or not it was the right bike for you. So most dealerships won't let you do this, but just bear in mind, getting out there, riding the bike, trying it out, makes a world of difference. And you may decide that the bike that you think looks really cool and the specs match everything you want feels like crap when you ride it, and that bike that you weren't quite sure about but was kind of your backup option feels like the best thing in the world. Just think about that, get out there and test ride it, and trust me, you won't regret it. If you liked this video, be sure to check out these two right here. They're definitely worth checking out. As always, ride safe, and remember, it's all about the adventure.